idea line of GS2 is कि ये जो questions आ रहे हैं sir in the GS paper 2, it is not straightforward कि आपसे पूछा importance, फिर पूछा challenges, and then you have to give some examples. No, not at all. ये GS paper 3 की तरह नहीं है. These GS2 lectures, especially the polity and governance, they will be oriented towards building an analysis about the particular topic. I see the Indian Constitution as a social contract. This dual relationship between the people and the state is known as social contract. I am here to give you again that analysis which is being missed by so many students. आप ये देखो, मैंने already कितने टर्म्स को यहां पे लिंक कर दिया है, फ्रॉम द कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ सोशल कॉन्ट्रैक्ट टू द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन टू कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनलिज्म एंड दैट स्टेट. लेकिन इन सब टॉपिक को याद रखने का तरीका क्या है, वो है मैफ लेक्चर्स. हेलो एंड वेलकम स्टूडेंट्स टू पल्स आईएएस. माई सेल्फ अमित मंगतानी. guys, so today we are continuing with our mains funnel lectures, but let me tell you guys, today we are starting a new paper, new GS, that is GS paper 2. And मैंने आपको बोला था that GS paper 2 की जब आप क्लासेस देखोगे, you will be amazed by the amount of understanding which I am going to give you in these lectures. These lectures, which we call it as very commonly, we call it as MAF, Mains Analytical Framework. ये lectures वो नहीं है कि आपको दिया कंटेंट और यहां पे अच्छा सा इसके अंदर ये पॉइंट लिखना है. No. That has been done for different papers. Plus, we have already given it to you in the Pulse handwritten notes. The idea line of GS2 is कि ये जो questions आ रहे हैं sir in the GS paper 2, it is not straightforward कि आपसे पूछा importance, फिर पूछा challenges, and then you have to give some examples. No, not at all. If you go through the PYQs, जो मैंने आपको अपने टेलीग्राम चैनल पे ऑलरेडी दिया हुआ है, GS2 PYQ analysis of last 13 years, you can see from the questions itself that it requires a great amount of understanding. ये GS paper 3 की तरह नहीं है. जिस तरीके से मैंने आपको GS paper 3 बताया, focusing on the understanding, but at the same time, I have also ensured कि आपके पास content points भी हो, कि आपके keywords हो and then उसके आगे specific facts हो. These GS2 lectures, especially the polity and governance, they will be oriented towards building an analysis about the particular topic. And the first topic itself, you will realize how these classes are going to be. How will these classes are going to be? The first topic that you see in your GS paper 2 is Indian Constitution. I'm pretty sure आप लोगों को पता है Indian Constitution क्या है, एक legal document according to you, yes or no? But let me give my understanding about Indian Constitution. And I want you to stay focused for the next 1 hour at least, so that you get a good feel that, okay, this is what Indian Constitution, achha, this is what constitutionalism means, this is what constitutional morality is, this is why the Constitution is a living document. और इन सब से आप क्वेश्चंस देखना आते हैं. Once this theme is completed, I'll show you the PYQs from this particular topic also at the end of this theme. So let me start the understanding about the Indian Constitution. अगर आप लोगों ने, I'm pretty sure आप लोगों ने मेरा वीडियो देखा होगा in which I have discussed about the GS2 syllabus. How I have deconstructed the GS paper 2 syllabus, starting with the basic idea of constitution that is mentioned in the syllabus. And I've told you that ये constitution को आप लोग as a legal document देखते हैं, but मैं थोड़ा और पहले जाता हूं, एक philosophical foundation build करता हूं. I see the constitution from the social contract perspective. क्योंकि मुझे पता अगर कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन को I see it as a social contract, I would be able to answer these questions easily. Constitutional values, preamble, constitutional morality, ये सब चीजें easily answer हो जाएंगी. Which we are going to see this part. Let me tell you this part, guys, we are going to see today. This part we are going to see today. Why? I'll tell you slowly आपको ये पूरा linked है, ये सब चीजें linked है. And let me start now with the detailed understanding about the Indian Constitution. To understand Indian Constitution, I told you that I see the Indian Constitution as a social contract. And thereby, how this social contract has emerged. How this social contract has emerged. आपको पता है, there was before the state, when there was no state, that is pre-state, जिसको हम पता है क्या बोलते हैं, we call it as a state of nature. Let me tell you, ये जो भी हम बातें कर रहे हैं, this is more a philosophical construct to understand this. Philosophical. Pre-state, that is before the formation of a state, we say that there is a state of nature. अब सर ये state of nature क्या है? A state of nature is a hypothetical situation. A state of nature is a hypothetical situation. Hypothetical situation. Before the formation of a state. Hypothetical situation before the formation of a state. Now, when I say before the formation of a state, I means before the implementation of laws, before the implementation of laws, government regulations, or even the formation of government, or even the formation of government, or even the formation of government. So that is the state of nature. और एक सिंपल लैंग्वेज में अगर आपको बताऊं, state of nature is a situation where the only principle that was followed is might is right. Might is right. Now you imagine a society. You imagine a society जहां पर the people exist with only one single law, a natural law, that is might is right. Who has the more muscular power, they are right, because they will somehow be able to get their decisions approved by the majority of the people. Somehow they will do that. That's a muscular power they have. The only natural law that was there exists, that was might is right. So ये जो state of nature है, हम इसको बोलते हैं before the concept of the state. I'm pretty sure आप लोगों का pre-polity clear है. So guys, pre-polity clear है, then only you will be able to understand these lectures. जैसे आपको state के concept पता होना चाहिए. That state is comprised of 4 elements. Sir, what are those 4 elements? First, a defined territory with a stable population. With a stable population governed by a government, an authority who exercises sovereignty over that territory. Sovereignty. So there is 4th element. So before that concept of the state, we used to say that there is a state of nature, which is a hypothetical situation. अब ये जो state of nature है, this state of nature is understood differently by different thinkers. Understood differently by different thinkers. If you say, sir, there are 3 people, I take it here. If I say first, sir, Hobbes. What does Hobbes think about this state of nature? Or what does then John Locke thinks about this state of nature? Or what does Rousseau think about this state of nature? If I talk about Hobbes, Thomas Hobbes, he believed that this state of nature is comprising or consists of the violence. He believes that the human being is very, very selfish and violent. He assumed that human behavior is selfish and violent, which can lead to a society where there is so much violence. Why? Because they will be only following one natural law, that is might is right. So thereby in that society, that in this state of nature, there will be only the ones who have might, they will survive, they will govern, they will ensure that their decisions are approved by the other people. The other people get to their decisions or approve their decisions. That is the state of nature which was thought by the Hopes. But Locke says, Locke says that no. You are thinking human being as a selfish, violent person. No, Hopes, you are wrong. He says, John Locke says that human being in this state of nature is free, possess liberty, possess freedom, and contains these natural rights. These are the natural rights. He believes that human being contains the natural rights of freedom, liberty, equality. But in this state of nature, there is no authority who will ensure the enforcement of these rights, who will ensure the protection of these rights. And when the state of nature is governed by this law, don't you think these rights can be violated by the other person? Definitely. And then come the another person, the Rousseau, who also believes that this state of nature, which is a pre-state, this state of nature is a peaceful society. This peaceful society is an equal society, is a free society where human beings are free. But it also says the society gets corrupted. The society gets corrupted due to private property, and once this private property occurs, that leads to social inequality in the society. So all of these three have a different perspective. They have a different perspective about the state of nature. आपको ये तीनों के पर्सपेक्टिव जानने की जरूरत नहीं है. But why I'm giving you in very brief, so that you get an idea that this is a state of nature where the people in this society wants to escape from this state of nature. Although they might be free, but there is a limitation that there is no government authority. As per Hopes, the people want to escape from this state of nature. They want to escape the violence that is prevailing in this state of nature. As per Locke, it says the people want to escape from this state of nature, want to create an organized society, want to create a government who enforces their rights, their natural rights of liberty, equality, freedom. Same goes for the Rousseau too. And thereby the concept come here, the social contract. Here comes the concept, the social contract, which led to the emergence of a state. This led to the emergence of a state. Emergence of state. So what this emergence of state says, the people who were part of the state of nature, they created this state. They created this state. Basically, these people who are in the society, in the state of nature, they come together, they organize together. वो साथ में आते हैं, they come together and created an institution known as a state. And why they have created this state? Why they have created this state? So that they have created this state. Again, this state has been created for different purpose by different thinkers. For different purpose for different thinkers. As per different thinkers, this state has been created to ensure security of the people. It will provide security and welfare of the people. Locke will say that this organized institute has been created to protect the natural rights. Protect the natural rights. Protect the natural rights. Or the rest will think that this will lead to the general will of the people. General will, a consent, the people, they have consented to create a state that will govern them, that will look after their natural rights. But while, let me tell you, guys, while creating a state, they have surrendered something. They have surrendered a part of their natural rights. They have surrendered a part of their natural rights. So that basically अपनी कुछ power they have surrendered to the state so that they can govern them, look after their security, look after their welfare, protect their rights. और यही सरेंडर की वजह से ही तो गाइस, इफ आई टेल यू, यही सरेंडर की वजह से ही तो फंडामेंटल राइट्स हैव रीजनेबल रेस्ट्रिक्शंस. यही सरेंडर की वजह से तो फंडामेंटल राइट्स हैव रीजनेबल रेस्ट्रिक्शंस. Otherwise, those rights, we call it as natural rights, they will not have any restrictions in the state of nature. The human being is completely free. They possess the rights of equality, liberty. But because they surrendered their power, that okay, we are surrendering some power and giving it to you. And this arrangement, this dual relationship between the people and the state is known as social contract. Is known as social contract. This dual relationship between the people and the state, that is the agreement between these two, we call it as social contract. अब ये तो देखो मैंने आपको एक philosophical बताया ना. Now let me link this idea with the concepts of Indian Constitution. What is this Indian Constitution? This Indian Constitution, if I try to understand, sir, this Indian Constitution is a social contract. This Indian Constitution is a social contract. I can say that easily. Sir, this Indian Constitution is a social contract between the people or created by the people of India. This Indian Constitution is a social contract created by the people of India. Remember the preamble, for the people of India. And with that constitution, this constitution has created the different organs of the state. This Indian Constitution has created different organs of the state. Executive, that is government, legislature, and you have judiciary. This Indian Constitution has created the state, the different organs of the state, executive, legislature, and judiciary. Now, remember, when this state has been created by this constitution and when created for certain purpose, do you think the government will have unlimited powers? No. Why? Hey, listen, government, you have been created by us. You have been created for our welfare, for protecting our rights, which is given in part 3 of the Indian Constitution. That is fundamental rights. Now, agar Indian Constitution, let me tell you, is creating this. So, the government that has been created by the Indian Constitution, tell me, will that government will be having unlimited powers? No. That government which will be created but through our Indian Constitution, that has limited powers. They have to operate within the rules or regulations set up under the Indian Constitution, within the boundaries of the Indian Constitution. And sir, this is what we call this term as constitutionalism. And sir, this is what we call it as limited government, that we call it as constitutionalism. This limited government, we call it as constitutionalism. Limited government, we call it as constitutionalism. Clear? Then, why this state has been created? Why this state? Obviously to provide, to protect the natural rights, to look after the welfare of the people's security. So my point is to achieve certain goals, and though that goals or the ideals or the values that needs to be achieved by the government enshrined in the constitution, sir, that we call it as constitutional values. That we call it as constitutional values. Constitutional values. Clear? So what are these constitutional values? So why the state has been created? What goals they are going to achieve? That is reflected in the constitution, and that we call it as constitutional values. हम देखेंगे constitutional values, different constitutional values given in our constitution, in our preamble, fundamental rights, TPSPs, guys. Are you getting my point? Then the last thing here is fulfillment. अब देखो constitution में तो दिया हुआ है, सर constitution में socialism दिया है, secularism दिया है, और minimization of inequality दिया है, so many values are there, democracy दिया है. These are values that has been given in the constitution. Now fulfillment or the adherence of the core values of the constitution, not just in letter but in spirit, is what we call it as constitutional morality. What we call it as constitutional morality. Are you getting my point? This is how the philosophy, this is how the four terms I have interlinked at a single place. The four terms I have interlinked at a single place. Let me just give you a summary. So we started with the state of nature. We have understood that what is the state of nature, although different thinkers think differently. This state of nature leads to a social contract between the people, and the state. And this social contract, I call it as Indian Constitution. Clear? Now, this social contract, that is the Indian Constitution, leads to the creation of a state. And not just only the state, the three organs of the state: executive, legislative, and judiciary. Now, if I talk of the government, obviously the social contract binds the government to operate within that framework, within that rules. And this limited government, guys, it provides for obviously limited government. यार हमने अपनी people ने, आप ये समझो, the people have surrendered only some powers. Not they have given complete powers to the state. They have surrendered some powers so that they can ensure security and welfare. Now, this limited government is known as constitutionalism, guys. This limited government is known as constitutionalism. Now, this limited government have been created. This limited government, guys, have been created to achieve various goals or objectives. It have been created to achieve various goals or objectives. And this goals and objectives is mentioned in the Constitution, which we call it as constitutional values. Constitutional values. Clear? And finally, adherence to the constitutional morals, constitutional provisions, adherence to the constitutional provisions, laws, provisions, laws, or achievement or fulfillment of constitutional values, this is known as इसको यहां तक ले जाते हैं, this is known as constitutional morality. So this is known as constitutional morality. This is known as constitutional morality. Constitutional morality, that is adherence to this. Let me tell you, this constitutional morality is different from the concept of public morality. Is different from the concept of public morality. Let me just tell you and warn you here, guys, once. If you believe that you will be able to understand this lecture without having a good understanding of polity for prelims, it won't be possible. You will not be able to have a good understanding of these lectures without a good understanding of polity prelims. Because I am here, I am not going to explain to you the concepts जो हम लोग pre में देखते हैं. I am here to give you again that analysis which is being missed by so many students. आप ये देखो, मैंने already कितने terms को यहां पे link कर दिया है, from the concept of social contract to the constitution to constitutionalism, and that state is doing or state is created to achieve some goals, ideals for the society, for the nation mentioned in the constitution known as constitutional values. And this practice of fulfillment of constitutional values, adhering to the constitution, is known as constitutional morality. Is known as constitutional morality. And this constitutional morality is different from the concept of public morality. मैं एक छोटा एग्जांपल देता हूं डिफरेंट बताने के लिए फ्रॉम द कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ पब्लिक मोरालिटी. फॉर एग्जांपल, आपने साबरीमाला केस अगर सुना हो सकता है. साबरीमाला केस में क्या था, दैट women between the age of 10 to 50 years, they were not generally allowed in the Sabrimala temple. But in the Sabrimala case, Supreme Court struck down that provision and allowed the entry of women into the Sabrimala temple. What is this? Public morality demands, public morality which is based on customs. Try to understand. Public morality which is based on customs, traditions. That public morality, guys, is it's saying that, okay, that provision is allowed. Women should not be allowed in Sabrimala temple. Because that provision, if it is there, it is based on public morality which is accepted mostly by the majoritarian. जैसे एक टाइम पे मैं आपको बताऊं, homosexual sex, that was also against the concept of public morality. But constitutional morality is completely different. Constitutional morality is adherence or achievement of the constitutional values. Constitutional morality, what does it say? It talks about gender equity. It talks about dignity. It talks about gender equality that I have discussed. अब जब ये कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल वैल्यूज, आप राइट टू लाइफ, लिबर्टी, फ्रीडम, सब कुछ दे रहे हो कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल वैल्यूज में, बट यू आर नॉट इंप्लीमेंटिंग इन प्रैक्टिस, दैट इज अ वायलेशन ऑफ कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल मोरालिटी. एज पर पब्लिक मोरालिटी, यू माइट बी राइट नॉट अलाउइंग द women because it is rooted to customs, traditions, and supported by majority. But constitution, the provisions, they have certain values to be implemented, and that because of those values, that value should not be just only implemented in letter, it should be in spirit. Oh, gender dignity is not taken care of, privacy rights are being violated, then why not we allow the women entry to the temples? Why not we decriminalize the homosexual 6. Why not we do that? Then triple talaq, why not it has been abolished? Why not we abolish that triple talaq? Why? Because how can you give a personal law supreme, or how can you give a supremacy to the personal law over the Indian constitution? No, man. Our constitution is a supreme document. So constitutional morality is adherence to the laws and provisions of the constitution, fulfillment of the values mentioned in the constitution, not just in letter, but in spirit. And it is different from the public morality, clearly stated in the Supreme Court verdict. Clearly. So now I hope, first of all, आप मुझे ये बात बताओ, I hope that you are able to understand this Indian constitution as a social contract. You are able to understand, first of all, Indian constitution as a social contract. How this Indian constitution aims to create an organized society based on the rules and regulations. If you want the specific provisions, let me give you the specific provisions through which I can say that, okay, Indian constitution is a social contract. Through which Indian constitution is a social contract. Look at the points here, guys. How Indian constitution is a social contract. The first provision is specific points. The first, preamble. In the preamble, clearly it is written, we the people of India, solemnly resolve to constitute a sovereign socialist and all. So who has created that constitution? It's the we citizens. Second, how can I say Indian constitution is a social contract? Again, look at the fundamental rights in part 3 of the Indian constitution. These fundamental rights cannot be violated by any government law, or cannot be violated by any government law or the executive orders. Yes, I'm not denying the fact they are subject to reasonable restrictions. I get that. They are subject to reasonable restrictions. No doubt about that. वो एक अलग डिबेट है, उसको आप लोग खुद देख सकते हो. डिबेट बिटवीन इंडिविजुअल राइट्स वर्सेस कम्युनिटी राइट्स. फॉर छोटा सा एग्जांपल बताता हूं. जैसे लाउड स्पीकर का ना, देयर वाज अ केस अ लॉन्ग टाइम बैक बैनिंग द यूज ऑफ लाउड स्पीकर्स आफ्टर 10. आप मुझे बताओ, लाउड स्पीकर से एक टाइम पे म्यूजिक बजता रहता था रात में. आपको क्या लग रहा है? हे, आई हैव अ राइट टू फ्रीडम, आई कैन डू व्हाटएवर, आई कैन लिसन व्हाटएवर अंडर आर्टिकल 19. बट योर एब्सोल्यूट राइट टू फ्रीडम इज हैम्परिंग द अदर राइट टू फ्रीडम टू स्लीप पीसफुली, is hampering their right to life under Article 21. So thereby, that is why these rights have certain restrictions so that a community rights are balanced. Clear? Third provision here, guys, is DPSPs. Part 4. DPSPs, that is part 4 of Constitution. Now, what is this DPSPs? These DPSPs form, or are the directives to the state. They're directives to the state to create a social justice, look after the welfare of the people, minimize the inequality in the society. यही सब mentioned है DPSPs में. Fourth, fundamental duties. Article 51A. Article 51A, fundamental duties. These fundamental duties give the duties to the people also. ऐसा नहीं कि पूरा काम सिर्फ स्टेट को करना है. People also. People. And what is that? To uphold the constitution, to uphold the ideals, national ideals, to promote fraternity and so many other things, even the environmental ethics, all those things. Clear? So fourth is fundamental duties. Fifth, separation of powers. Separation of powers. Under Article 50, that is separation of judiciary from the executive. And then the another very important part, Indian Constitution as a living document, so that it can adapt to the changing needs of the society under Article 368. Under Article 368. So this is a living and evolving document. So the whole point, the first thing which I wanted just to convey, that Indian Constitution is a social contract. अब आपको easily दिमाग में याद रहेगा कि हाँ social contract है, तो the social contract has been created so that the state is created, and with that state has been created for certain purpose, for the fulfillment of goals, for the fulfillment of certain values or the implementation of certain values. Clear? थोड़ा सा मैं आपको यहां पे कंटेंट दिखा देता हूं, आप ये देखो. Views of different thinkers on social contract. On social contract. Look at this, Thomas Hobbes. Thomas Hobbes. How he looked into the state of nature. He said state of nature was a brutal, chaotic, characterized by war of all against all. The same idea. Might is right. Clear? You see, thinkers like Thomas Hobbes, John Locke, Rousseau, all envisioned a hypothetical state of nature where humans existed before organized society. Clear? Hobbes, brutal and chaotic, life was solitary, poor, brutish and short. Short क्यों? कभी भी जा सकते हो. But John Locke says, no, the state of nature was a state of liberty and equality. Individuals have natural rights, ये important है, natural rights to life, liberty, property. But there was a lack of an impartial authority to enforce these rights. Rousseau said it's a state of peace, equality, human beings are free, but they eventually corrupted with the private property and social inequality. And that is the reason the people decided to come together and create a state through a social contract. Clear? So flawed by the limitations of the state of nature, individuals came together through a social contract to establish a state. To establish a state to secure their rights and promote the welfare. Same thing. What is the reason of social contract given by Hobbes? To escape the violence of the state of nature in exchange for security and order. To escape the violence of the state of nature in exchange for security and order. For security. Then this has been created to form a government, an impartial authority which derive its legitimacy from the consent of the governed with the limited purpose of protecting the natural right. Limited purpose of protecting the natural rights. That is the purpose. Rousseau said to create a society which is based on reason and the general will of the people. And this will aim at the common good of all citizens. You can see that power of the sovereign, primary responsibility is to protect the lives and property of the citizens. They have absolute authority to enforce the social contract and maintain order. Here, the government power was limited by social contract, constitutionalism. It is limited by social contract and could be overthrown if they fail to protect these rights. Here, sovereignty resided with the people. I have told you, sovereignty resided with the people and the government derive its legitimacy from the serving the general will. Elections में नहीं serve किया, कोई बात नहीं, elections में next government. Individual rights, here in this case limited in return for protection and security. Natural and inalienable, natural and inalienable. So हमने जो social contract जो adopt किया, हमारा जो Indian Constitution है, we call this Indian Constitution, guys, more of a free constitution, promoting freedom, promoting liberty. And sir, how can I say that? Again, because this government which we have created, first of all, it's a limited government which have to exercise within the rules and the bounds of the Indian Constitution. And the very important thing is the natural rights, which we say in our Constitution as fundamental rights, which cannot be taken by even a parliamentary law or the government executive order. Cannot be taken by that. Clear? So I hope you understood that. Now, once we understood that, we come to an idea of constitutionalism. Constitutionalism, it's very simple idea which we have discussed already. Just give me a minute. Yes. So constitutionalism, guys, we have already discussed. It's the limited government. Constitutionalism is limited government. Limited government. In short, और वो मैंने आपको ऑलरेडी समझा दिया है. Sir, when I say limited government, in short, government bound by the laws of Indian Constitution. Laws of Indian Constitution. Now, how can I say so? What are the features or the components of constitutionalism? I can say first is rule of law. Look at this rule of law. This rule of law, that means it's a law that is prevailing. No one is above the law. ऐसा नहीं है that the law will be applied differently to different sections of society. Let's not talk about practically. Philosophically, that is, you can say theoretically, what should be the case? Rule of law. The law should apply equally to each section of the society, to each citizen, irrespective of its caste, class, sex, place of birth, residence, or any other thing. It should be applied equally. Clear? Second, as I told you, the very important component of constitutionalism is limited government. Limited government. Clear? And how can we limit the government? By when we are giving powers, when the people are giving powers to create the state, we do not give power to each, we do not give all the powers to a single organ. No. We do not give all the powers to a single organ. We will separate the powers into 3 organs of the state. Because already we know, sir, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So वो चीज मैं आपको separation of powers में बताऊंगा, that it's very important that if you want to create a limited government, there has to be separation of powers. And that's why you see 3 organs of the state. One, legislature. One is legislature, which is responsible. Or actually, if I talk about this legislature is elected by the people, represents the will of the people, carries the legitimacy, carries the credibility. It is something that have been created through our consent. And that's why it is responsible for the formulation of laws and policies to govern us. यही तो idea था ना social contract का, that we create. Through our consent, the government is created. So that legislature that has been created through our consent only, हम जो elect कर रहे हैं हमारे तो consent है ना? The people who are elected in the state legislature or parliament, it carries our legitimacy. Yes or no? It carries our consent to govern us, to provide for our welfare, to deliver the public service to us. Getting my point? So separation of powers में पहला legislature. Second, executive is responsible for the implementation of the laws and policies which have been enacted by the parliament. And third organ of the state is judiciary. That judiciary has been created to interpret the laws and policies. But not just only separating the powers. No. There is also checks and balances. We also need to ensure that if some organ of the state is not misusing the funds, not misusing their position, there has to be checks and balances. Checks and balances. Such as, for example, if the parliament enacted a law which is somehow destroying the constitutional provisions, Supreme Court or the judiciary can strike down that law. If the executive is doing that, if the executive is somehow going against the constitutional value, judiciary can strike down that regulation. So it's a checks and balance. Yes or no? Not only that. Suppose करो सर जुडिशियरी ही करप्ट हो गए. सर जुडिशियरी में आप देख रहे होगे जजेस के घरों पे पैसा मिल रहा है बहुत ज्यादा. Corrupt judges, the judges when become corrupt, how do we, sir, make a check and balance on the judiciary? How do we do that? Through 2 ways. One is appointment, sir. Yes, sir, collegium system, I'm not doubting. Sir, collegium system recommend the judges for the appointment to the higher judiciary, but it is ultimately has to be approved by the president who act on the aid and advice of council of ministers. Check number 1. इसी वजह से कई बार हायर जुडिशियरी में अपॉइंटमेंट डीले होते हैं. Second, another case, sir, impeachment. Judges can be impeached by the parliament. Isn't it a very good check on the judiciary? Judges can be impeached from their own positions. So this is checks and balances that is there. Clear? The very another important point, constitution is a supreme law. Constitution is a supreme law. You do not think any law above this constitution. So whatever the constitution has said, you have to adhere to its constitutional values. And for that, judicial review is required. Judicial review is required. Because judicial review will give the powers to the judiciary to review the parliamentary laws and the executive orders. And then this we have already seen, fundamental rights. Fundamental rights already put a restriction to the government. They listen, you cannot take away or abridge my fundamental rights. It is clearly mentioned under Article 13. Under Article 13 of the Indian Constitution. And then you have popular sovereignty. That is also the constitutional, that we are the citizens. We citizens are sovereign. If you do not, जैसे रोसोयू ने बोला, if you do not operate, if you do not look after the common good or the will of the people, if you do not govern as per the will of the people, do not provide the public services in the most efficient manner, we can remove you in the next election. So we are sovereign. We can remove you in the next election. This is what constitutionalism is. Some important pillars of constitutionalism. Clear? Now, once we have understood from the state part that, okay, state is limited, the limited government and the certain components, how we are making that state limited, or the government limited. But then we have created the state, we have come up with the social contract. That social contract has certain values that needs to be achieved by the state. That social contract, which we call it as Indian Constitution, has certain values, guys, goals that need to be achieved by the Indian Constitution, and we call that as constitutional values. अगर आप एक लाइन लिखना चाहते हो, so you can write it down. Constitutional values represent the higher ideals of justice. Constitutional values represent the higher ideals of justice and morality. Higher ideals of justice and morality that transcend the majoritarian rule. It transcends the majoritarian rule and guiding the nation's ethical and legal framework. These values are the one which define the core principles of the constitution. और ये constitutional values, आप मुझे बताओ, sir, what is the source of constitutional values? Sir, what is the source of constitutional values and what values have been given under that? Some provisions, or judgments, if it is there. Provisions or judgments. Source. आपको क्या लगता है, क्या है source of the constitutional values? First is the preamble itself, guys. Look at the preamble. That is the source of the constitutional values. Clearly it has said, sir, we the people of India. We. So what is the constitutional idea that has been propagated here? Sovereignty. Try to understand this. We the people of India. So that is popular sovereignty. This is the right word. popular sovereignty, have solemnly resolved to constitute a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic. Yes or no? Popular sovereignty is there to constitute a socialist, secular, democratic republic, and strives to achieve justice. This justice can be social, economic, political. Yes or no? Second, sir, equality of status and opportunity. Sir, liberty of thought, expression, belief. Yes or no? Sir, fraternity and dignity of the individual. सोचो इतनी वैल्यूज तो मैंने सिर्फ और सिर्फ यहीं से निकाल ली, प्रियम्बल से. Fraternity or dignity of the individual. Clear? So these are some of the values, guys, which are given in the preamble itself. Given in the preamble. आप आसानी से यहां पे कुछ भी प्रोविजन से आप बता सकते हो. Keswananda Bharati case 1973, preamble is a part of the constitution. Yes or no? Sir, these provisions have been continuously implemented by the government through various laws. Give them. Sir, this socialist was not there in the original constitution, but it was introduced through 42nd Amendment. And to implement such provisions, sir, certain provisions or certain steps have been taken, such as nationalization of banks. Yes or no? Nationalization of banks, nationalization of coking coal mines, all that thing. But preamble is not just the only source. Sir, the second source is, मैं यहाँ पे लिख लेता हूं और आपको आप लिखते रहना अपने आप ना. Second is fundamental rights. Sir, fundamental rights which advocate the values of dignity, which have advocate the values of liberty. Sir, how you are saying dignity? Can you elaborate that? Abolition of untouchability. Don't you think, sir, it's a dignity itself? Abolition of untouchability. It's a prohibition of forced labor under Article 23. Abolition of untouchability under Article 27. Sir, non-discrimination under Article 15 on the basis of caste, sex and all. What is this? Sir, gender equality. Gender equality, sir. All these provisions, what does it guide? It guides dignity. Clear? Then the other values propagated like environmental ethics too. वो चलो मैं फंडामेंटल ड्यूटीज में दिखा दूंगा वैसे. उसके अलावा सर फ्रीडम क्लियरली मेंशन, सर फ्रीडम आर्टिकल 19, लिबर्टी अंडर आर्टिकल 21. yes or no? Liberty under article 21. And freedom is not just confined to freedom to speech, expression, freedom of religion, sir, secularism. Already chalo mentioned hai. So that is fundamental rights also give certain values. So third, DPSPs, obviously. Don't you think we have seen DPSP guide the state to create a welfare state? Minimize inequality. Propagates community participation. Sir, Gandhian principles, Article 40, village panchayats, organization of village panchayats. Gandhian principle. Sir, it promotes animal ethics, environmental ethics. Conserve, protect the environment. Yes or no? Modern agricultural practices. These are values clearly given under DPSPs. Fourth, sir, fundamental duties. Fundamental duties to protect, conserve the environment, to uphold the national movements, national movement ideals. All those things, guys, is a part of that. Clear? To promote scientific temper, that is also mentioned, guys. Fraternity to hum dekh hi chuke. All that is mentioned. Then, sir, what other values that have been there? Sir, under DPSP, there is one more value which I have not highlighted. Sir, separation of powers, Article 50, separation of the executive from judiciary. Yes or no? Then some other values that is also there in the constitution, sir, like independent judiciary or the power of judicial review. Power of judicial review under Article 32. That is judicial review power. That is also the constitutional value, sir. Then, sir, federalism, that center state, that is the division of powers between the center and the states is about federalism. Sir, 7th schedule. How these relations, center state relations and interstate. तो ये सब क्या है guys? ये सब constitutional values हैं. अब ये सब constitutional values हैं. Now my next question is, इसमें हमें हर constitutional value के बारे में पढ़ना चाहिए. My point is, देखो फेडरलिज्म मैं लेके जाऊंगा, सेपरेशन ऑफ पावर्स भी मैं लेके जाऊंगा. डोंट वरी अबाउट दैट. फिर मैं आपको बताऊंगा उस टाइम पे क्या पढ़ना है. बट एट प्रेजेंट, जस्ट आफ्टर दिस लेक्चर, the values which are imbibed or given in the given in the preamble, the values which are given in the preamble, I want you to go through that. Sir, in what way you have to go through that constitutional value? Let me give you an example there, guys. Let me give you an example. If I talk about, if I talk about a value that is socialism, how you have to cover it? और ये डायरेक्टली वी हैव गिवन इट इन द पल्स हैंड रिटन नोट्स ऑफ इंडियन पॉलिटी गाइस, तो आप लोग आराम से कर सकते हो. लेकिन कैसे? जैसे सोशलिज्म एक वैल्यू है, क्लियर? फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल यू शुड नो सम बेसिक्स अबाउट सोशलिज्म, जो आप जनरली प्री में पढ़ लेते हो. सर व्हाट आई मीन, द डेफिनेशन ऑफ सोशलिज्म, डेमोक्रेटिक सोशलिज्म क्या होता है, सोशलिज्म व्हेन इट वाज इंट्रोड्यूस्ड इन द इंडियन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन, लाइक दैट. वंस यू आर एबल टू अंडरस्टैंड दिस सोशलिज्म, then you go like that is socialism in India under threat right now? So you have to discuss that currently what are the threats or challenges to socialism, and not just challenges. Some say that India is moving towards socialist state. Sir, how we are promoting this socialism? In the same way, you have to do like this for secularism also. How the secularism is under threat and how we are promoting secularism. आपको दोनों में 4-4 पॉइंट या 5-5 पॉइंट तैयार करने. That's it. आपको दोनों में 5-5 पॉइंट, 4-4 पॉइंट तैयार करने हैं. Then only it will be done. This is what socialism, like this is what the value you have to do it. जैसे सोवरेंटी की भी बात करनी है कि अच्छा सोवरेंटी हमारे यहां, जैसे डेमोक्रेसी ले लेते हैं. सो डेमोक्रेसी, व्हाट डू यू मीन बाय डेमोक्रेसी? व्हाट इज द काइंड ऑफ डेमोक्रेसी वी हैव? डायरेक्ट, इनडायरेक्ट, टॉक अबाउट दैट. एंड देन इन द डायरेक्ट इनडायरेक्ट वी नो अबाउट 4 टूल्स ऑफ डायरेक्ट डेमोक्रेसी: रेफरेंडम, प्लेबिसाइट, रिकॉल, ऑल दैट स्टफ. ये सब चीजें देखो, आप पूछोगे मुझसे सर ये बेसिक आप पढ़ा दो. नो, आई एम नॉट गोइंग टू कवर दैट. That's why I've separately kept these lectures named as MAF lectures. The idea is to build an analytical framework, और अंदर का जो फिलर है, वो या तो आप पल्स हैंड रिटन नोट से पढ़ लो डायरेक्टली, पल्स हैंड रिटन नोट से. लेकिन इन सब टॉपिक को याद रखने का तरीका क्या है? वो है MAF lectures. That is what MAF lectures is. Clear? So I hope you will be doing this. ठीक है, ज्यादा नहीं, सिर्फ इतना थ्रेड्स, प्रमोशन अगर आ जाए भूल से तो हो जाना चाहिए. Then lastly I told you this constitutional morality. Again you can write it down one line about constitutional morality here. Constitutional morality is the moral duty to uphold the core values of the constitution. Is the moral duty to uphold the core values of the Indian Constitution. एक कोट मैं हमेशा याद रखता हूं कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल मोरालिटी से. कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल मोरालिटी इज नॉट अ नेचुरल सेंटिमेंट. It has to be cultivated. It has to be cultivated. So constitutional morality is not a natural sentiment. It has to be cultivated by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. So what he says, he believed that constitutional morality is what? Fulfillment of the values of the constitution. And he believed that it is not something that a person is born with, that he knows, okay, I am born with, and I know I have to implement the provisions or fulfill the provisions of the constitution. No. It has to be trained. When it says that it has to be trained, it means that the people should be made aware about their rights. People should be made aware about the values that is being given in the constitution. People should be aware about the values of like this dignity, the privacy, the gender equality, so that they implement it in not just letter, but implemented in spirit in their private space, personal space also. That is constitutional morality, what he's trying to explain. It is not unnaturally. He says that a person is not born naturally with an ability, hey, listen, I'll be implementing the provisions of the constitution. Not at all. But it has to be cultivated by making them more and more aware about their rights. Making them more and more aware about their rights, making them educated about their responsibilities. Clear? And that is why you must have seen in the past few, I would say pre-COVID actually, thoda zyada tha. Pre-COVID you would have seen that how the Supreme Court is implementing this constitutional morality. How the Supreme Court is implementing this constitutional morality. The various judgments of the Supreme Court that clearly depict the constitutional morality, and let me tell you, those judgments clearly differ from what public morality is. It clearly differs from what public morality is. Sir, for example, NAS Foundation case. Achha, I think I have brought it here. Yes. NAS Foundation versus Government of NCT of Delhi, 2009. They decriminalized the consensual homosexual acts between adults. Clear? Declaring Section 377 of IPC as violation of rights. Section 377 was struck down. But obviously, this case was overruled by the another case. That case, I think Suresh Kaushal case. Let me check that. It was overturned, but somehow, again in Navtesh Singh Johar versus Union of India, clearly Supreme Court overturned its previous verdict and struck down Section 377. Clear? So that is how we can say the constitutional morality, because it's preaching the principle of liberty, privacy, that's privacy, equality. This is the constitutional value. The Supreme Court is committed to implement these values. Then this case, Joseph Sain versus Union of India, it decriminalized adultery and declared that it is a violation of the violation of the rights of equality, dignity, privacy. देखो ना, constitutional values इनको implement करने के लिए they have decriminalized adultery. Adultery at that point of time was Section 497 of IPC. Section 497 of the IPC. Clear? Then you look at this case, Sabrimala case, very famously called Sabrimala case. It's ruled that the exclusion of women between the age of 10 to 50 years from the Sabrimala temple violates 4 key principles of constitutional morality. 4 values is being violated: justice, liberty, equality, and fraternity. Not only that, one more case, I have not mentioned it here, but please you do that. Shaira Bano case. Which abolished the triple talaq system. That instant triple talaq system, that is abolished. Again, that implementing the constitutional morality. Clear? So Supreme Court or the judiciary, I would say, they are taking the serious steps to implement the values that are imbibed in our constitution. Clear? So now I hope at least you have been able to understand the Indian constitution. You must have been able to understand the principle of constitutionalism, constitutional values, और constitutional values आपको कैसे पढ़ना है पल्स हैंड रिटन नोट से, and then at the end constitutional morality. आप ये सोचो ये वो चैप्टर नहीं है जब आप बोलो कि सर मुझे यहाँ पे सिग्निफिकेंस पढ़ा दो, चैलेंजेस, वो तो आपके हमारे नोट्स में दिए ही हुए हैं. लेकिन the questions again at the last I'm saying it, they are coming in a direction where you have to know a good understanding about these particular topics. We'll continue with this in the next class where I'll start with Constitution as a living document. How the Constitution has evolved over the years. What are the provisions or what are the amendment provisions that guide us? And then we'll talk about the doctrine of basic structure too. This will be our one more lecture for this particular theme, and with that we'll complete this theme as a MAF. बाकी छोटे छोटे टॉपिक्स आपको हाईलाइट कर दूंगा, वो आपको खुद पढ़ने पड़ेंगे. Clear? Lastly, I want you guys to keep that GS2 topic listing with yourself. GS2 की टॉपिक लिस्टिंग प्लीज और प्लीज आप अपने पास रखो, क्योंकि GS2 टॉपिक लिस्टिंग में आप मार्क करते चलो सर दैट वी हैव कवर्ड दीस टॉपिक्स, वी हैव कवर्ड दीस टॉपिक्स. द टॉपिक्स व्हिच आई हैव नॉट कवर्ड, यू आस्क मी, आई विल गिव यू द कंटेंट. आई हैव दैट, डोंट वरी. Clear? You ask me, I'll attach certain attachments as per according to the lecture to lecture. But I want you to understand these classes properly. So that's it guys for now. Take care, study well. We'll meet in the next session for sure.